For the past several months, the violent slaughter of Christians in Nigeria has emerged as one of the most hotly discussed topics in international news today. But what separates the subject from others, though, is that journalists across the media have failed to investigate primary source evidence when it comes to this subject. In other words, few journalists have gone to Nigeria to dig deep into this specific issue. But even fewer have sat down and talked to the actual families who are affected by this violence. I decided to step in and fill that gap. I spent 1 week in Nigeria sitting down with persecuted Christians and their families to hear their stories. But not only that, I did the grunt work and dug deep into the weeds of this specific issue and thoroughly investigated not just what's happening, but also why it's happening. So let's begin. What's going on in Nigeria? The U.S. State Department has 4 tiers when it comes to ranking how dangerous travel to a specific country is, 1 being the least and 4 being the most. Nigeria is ranked as a 3, meaning it is considered very dangerous and one should reconsider travel due to a high rate of kidnappings, civil unrest, and terrorism as well. The violence against Christians in this West African country is twofold. On one hand, you have Boko Haram, which is an Islamic terrorist organization similar to ISIS, butchering Christians just because they're Christians. On the other hand, you have a much more complex issue, which is violence stemming from Christian versus Muslim land disputes involving an ethnic people called the Fulanis, most of whom are also Muslims. That issue is much more complicated. Yet the violence from both of these groups directed towards Christians tends to get conflated whenever persecution in the West African country is discussed. But when you're investigating this issue, it's important to flesh out each of these stories equally and discuss all of its parts. So the approach that I decided to take was to talk to the people on the ground, whose ancestors have lived in Nigeria for centuries. This would be the most journalistic way of examining the issue. I flew into Lagos, which is a major coastal city in the south. Compared to the rest of the country, it's considered generally safe by the locals so long as you're not acting like an idiot. Once there, I flew to the country's capital city, called Abuja. It's located in an area called the Federal Capital Territory, FCT, in the central belt of Nigeria. Up to this point, all I knew about the issue was just the general knowledge put out by legacy media outlets. That is to say, not much. The aim I had, though, was this. I need to talk to the local people. But not just anyone. I need to talk to people, specifically Christians, who've been driven out of their homes up north by Islamic fighters, be they either Boko Haram insurgents or Fulani herdsmen. These people would tell me the full story. And with each person I did end up interviewing, I asked if they wanted their identity protected or if we were free to use it. We acted accordingly. And this is considered good journalism. The first place I visited was an international displacement persons camp located near Abuja. Known as IDPs, these people are quite different from refugees. Generally speaking, refugees flee internationally to find safety. IDPs, however, are forced out of their homes and can only take refuge inside a temporary camp in their home country. According to the United Nations Refugee Agency, there are about 3 million IDPs in Nigeria as of 2021. Needless to say, it wouldn't be terribly difficult to find some to interview. That number nowadays is undoubtedly much higher. The first IDP camp we visited was called Massacre due to its close proximity to the town of Wassa, just outside of Abuja. After talking with Jeffrey, who works as chairman of the camp and is now getting involved in local government to represent the hardships that these people face, we learned that there are approximately 7,776 people here, and the camp has been in operation for over 10 years, populated mainly by people fleeing violence from Boko Haram, making it an ideal location to learn what's going on. Turns out, word spreads fast. So by the time we got there, we ended up meeting not just the chairman of Wasakam, but we met up with and subsequently interviewed the chairman of around 6 or 7 different IDP camps, representing tens of thousands of people. Now, what's interesting is that not all of them were Christians, as I'd initially expected. Some of them were Muslim. My first approach was to just learn their stories. What's happening? One IDP camp chairman, who was once the owner of a major shop in the village near central Guza, has some interesting details to provide. Check it out.
My experience with the Boko Haram, what I know is they didn't spare Christians, they didn't spare Muslims. Whoever they see, they kill. I have a big shop, so the first time I saw them, it was after evening prayers. So after the prayer and fasting, their Ramadan something. So they came with motorcycles. Each of the motorcycles carry about 3 persons, well armed. So when they first entered, they started hearing shooting and these slogans, Allahu Akbar. And he has a big shop in the main city, very close to the chief palace. So they started hearing sporadical shooting from even far away.
According to him, they didn't spare anyone. Yet, all the while, they were chanting Allahu Akbar. Starting with the security forces, Boko Haram apparently slaughtered top down, killing primarily men. They also burned both a church and a mosque.
They started with the securities before to penetrate to the main city. They cleared the security before they enter the main city. There is a big church in the main city. They burned it down, and a bigger mosque also, close to the palace also, they burned it down. So this kind of thing, people burning things like it, both church and Muslim and mosques, you wouldn't even know who actually they are, because they didn't discriminate from their killing. How I escaped, I was in my shop, and I have a little chemist close to my shop because I combined the two, because it's my field. So a military man came and bought 2 pairs of shoes from me, 15,000 each, that is 30,000. I pocketed the money in my back pocket. Then they came, and when they spotted the military vehicle, they opened fire. And then he fell into the gutter, and the military man followed him. So the military man asked him, "Don't raise your head." They keep scrolling inside the gutter to a long distance until they came to a certain place that they came out, and they climbed the mountain. So that was how he escaped.
Luckily, he was able to escape by crawling into a gutter, fleeing, and climbing a mountain. His father was not so lucky. Being 87 years old, he was too old to run away and climb the mountain, resulting in him being killed. The women and children, though, were left alive. Another Muslim chairman, this one in charge of an IDP camp called Malaysia, told a similar story, saying that Boko Haram attacked both Christians and Muslims indiscriminately, yet starting with uniformed security personnel.
Then from there, killing both the Muslim and the Christian, attacking churches, mosques, market squares, and other public places. If they know that you are personnel, they will attack you and kill you. They don't maybe the organs on top, or no, whoever. If you're working with the Nigerian police, you'll be killed. If you're working with Nigerian army, you'll be killed. Immigration, customs, and other personnel.
He would go on to say that his very own brother was killed. But this still begs the question that we haven't yet answered. Why are both Muslims and Christians seeming to be killed by an explicitly Islamic group? We wouldn't find that out until later. But what we did find out from the chairman of Waru IDP camp, named Elijah, is that Boko Haram doesn't slaughter without a plan. There is a detailed planning and execution of an attack. They start first with security personnel, killing them before moving on to successful businessmen in the individual communities.
They came to our village in a group. When they came, they started looking for security personnel initially. They were fishing out security personnel, military, police, civil defense. From there, they started heading to businessmen who are well-being in the communities. They will be chanting Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, shooting guns on people. Be whoever you are, if you are not in support of what they are doing, whether you are a Muslim, you are a Christian, you are a pagan, you will be eliminated. They usually used to say Western education is forbidden. That's the full meaning of Boko Haram.
If they caught you, it was particularly brutal. According to the locals that we interviewed, they would quote-unquote slaughter you with a machete like a ram. Elijah would go on to tell us that his village still experiences repeated attacks by Boko Haram today, and his local government is currently still under captivity by Boko Haram. While Elijah escaped, many didn't. His friend's father was killed while running away.
In my presence, they killed my friend's dad when we were on the run.
Right there next to
you? We were on the run when they were chasing us. They shoot him with gun, he fell down, and we couldn't be able to render any assistance because they were after us.
But how did they get more followers? They have to come from somewhere. The chairman of Zinda IDP camp gave us some insight into how this happens from his own experience.
They enter the villages to gather people. After they gather the people, anybody who don't want to follow them, just you go raise your hand. If you raise your hand that anywhere, just go like this. Anybody will not raise up your hand, just then we keep just and go put fire, pop, kill them all. Either you be Muslim, either you be Christian, no selecting by that time. Then go to another village again, then go get youth, gather up. Then go force that youth, then go give you some other money with that gun, AK-47, then go train you just normal go. If you no go follow them, just they will kill you. This is the thing that Boko Haram combine, showing people thousands of youth.
Boko Haram, after burning everything to the ground, rounds up people into one group. From there, they separate people into two: new followers and dissenters. All who refuse to join are shot. One sentiment is made very clear. The chairman of Zinda IDP camp does not want to remain in the camps, and neither do any of his people. They want to go home. Ongoing terrorism from Boko Haram is preventing that from happening. We also learned something different when we talked to a man named Elijah Andrews, who wasn't a camp chairman himself, but showed up on behalf of his chairman, representing his people from yet another IDP camp. His perspective is especially unique because his people are originally from an area known as the Sambisa Forest, which is located north in the Borno state. Is that Boko Haram also operates out of the exact same location. Unlike many of the others that we spoke to, Elisha's people attempted to fight back, yet they came across something noteworthy. Boko Haram is obtaining brand new Toyota Hilux trucks. The Toyota Hilux has a global reputation for being a practically indestructible pickup truck. When you think of a tough truck, you typically think of a Toyota Tacoma or Ford F-150. Those typically come to mind. While those have stood the test of time, the Hilux has stood the test of terrorism. If you come across a video of Islamic militants in the Middle East and Africa driving trucks mounted with machine guns, typically they're Toyota Hiluxes. This is a durable and long-lasting piece of machinery that is not manufactured in the United States. If you want to get one here, you'd have to import it from a different country. But similar to both the weapons used and the military uniforms worn by Boko Haram, someone or something is giving these people brand new trucks.
My testimony and experience is different from my brothers here because we are at that very Sambisa forest, we are there farming. Before we even leave our community or village, Boko Haram brought attack for us about 11 times. When they came, they were attacking us and we were trying to attack them also. While trying to run and escape, then we came across a brand new Hilux belonging to the terrorists.
Boko Haram is for some reason extremely well-equipped, methodical, and ruthless in their killing. Yet this has left a glaring, unavoidable question. Why does it seem like they are also killing Muslims? I thought this was persecution against the Christians. To answer that question, we turned our focus from IDP camp leadership to everyday IDPs themselves. First, we interviewed a man named John, who was originally from the aforementioned and extremely dangerous Borno state. What John told us made sense perfectly.
It is primarily people they are killing is Christian, like from his own local government. Christians are the very rich and wealthy people because the works of their hands is blessed. So they kill them and send them out. So coming over now to take over their own belongings, their houses, their even big gates, they will remove it to go and sell it. So the fight broke in between them. So the churches that he personally know that is burned down is about 20-something. And even in their state capital, no single mosque that is burned, but church is burned. He said he's not afraid anywhere his face and whatever he said now can be published all over the world. The truth is that it is Christians they are killing. That in Nigeria here, as a Christian, if you come up to say the truth, they will look for you to kill you. So even among their leaders here, they are doing all these covers because they are still mixed.
Okay, so the camp chairmen have to say that it's both so that they're covering.
Good.
But in reality, it's actually the Christians.
Yes.
According to John, the IDP camp chairmen have to work to be diplomatic due to the nature of their job, because both Muslims and Christians are present in the camps. But when you talk to the people specifically, as opposed to their leaders who are in unique positions, you get the real story. Boko Haram singles out and slaughters Christians. This became clearer the more people that we talked to on and off camera at Massacre. By this point, we were starting to get a fleshed-out idea of Boko Haram's anti-Christian persecution, in addition to how their well-equipped zealots operate. Another detail worth pointing out is that where there were once churches, mosques now stand. If the persecution was indeed equal amongst Christians and Muslims, logically this is not something you would see.
He said before he left, he witnessed it with his eyes, that even in his community, now there is no single church, but there are mosques. So he witnessed it with his eyes, that a plane will come, maybe all these small choppers will come down to the mountain, will come there and do whatever they want to do, they don't know, and then will take back.
John then filled us in on a point that would become a critical part of my investigation.
So when they started like that, then the government withdrew all their security personnel, and then they started coming to their communities, and if they come, they will use their usual slogans, Allahu Akbar, and then they will ask you questions, which religion you are. If you are a Christian, then they will kill you, and they started burning churches. This is what I saw with my eyes, and my eyewitness is not hearsay. Right now, even among my local government brothers, that they are Muslims that are part of Boko Haram killing us. Government has employed them, and now they become part of their politicians. They move together. These are the same people that kill us.
You heard it from him. That's what he saw with his very own eyes. There's no hearsay. When these attacks started in his village of Chinene, rather than engage the Islamic fighters, the Nigerian government pulled out security forces while Boko Haram slaughtered Christians and burned churches to the ground. This raises yet another question that has to be answered. Why did the government pull its forces back? To answer that question, we talked with a source of ours who works in the Nigerian government, who decided to remain anonymous. The source told us about a recent attack in the town of Mubi. After the town was attacked, the military took 40 days to respond. The source told us that the reason is because Nigerian army troops are ordered to stand down when Boko Haram attacks. In one instance, Boko Haram was allowed to overtake a barracks, plunder ammunition and weapons, and take uniforms. This fact falls in line perfectly with the testimonies that we just heard, which is that many Boko Haram fighters are uniformed. The soldiers were allowed to keep their lives if they surrendered and fled, so that's what they did. Things work differently across the world. In the US, soldiers have to abide by a code of conduct that prevents them from surrendering to terrorists in any capacity, if they have the means of doing so. If American troops received an order similar to the ones that the Nigerian soldiers did, it would be deemed an illegal order. The government source also gave us insight into what happens when Boko Haram overtakes a village and remains for multiple days on end. To maintain adequate supplies, helicopters come concealed in the cover of night with supplies. They hover over the town in question, drop food, ammunition, and then leave. Who are these trained pilots and where the helicopters are coming from is one detail that is left a mystery. Perhaps this calls for a part 2 in the future. To close out our discussion with John, we learn another detail that falls in line with the rest. Anyone who says the government is taking care of them and their people as Boko Haram continues its rampant killing scheme is lying. At the end of our investigation in Massacre, it's clear and unavoidable that Boko Haram is indeed targeting Christians, challenging the chairman's earlier point that the persecution applies to both Christians and Muslims equally. Churches are being burned down, clergymen and pastors are being systematically slaughtered, which we'll dig into more later, and where churches once stood, mosques now stand. All of this evidence for this conclusion is corroborated by yet one more individual that we talked to at Massacre, named Peter, who worked in the local government back in Guza, a place that we mentioned earlier. He was hit in the leg by gunfire when he and others tried to surround a church and protect it from being burned to the ground.
They brought an attack. They succeeded in burning one church, so they came to the one right in their village. They want to burn it, so the villagers came out that they wouldn't allow the church to be burned, so they started shooting. That was how he got the injury. So when the military came, instead of the military to arrest those that are holding arms, they entered inside the church, they ransacked everywhere and arrested the elders, took them to Borno State capital for about 2 or 3 weeks.
Peter allowed us to photograph the scars on his leg, which look like this. The following day, I continued my investigation at a different location near the city of Makurdi in the Benue state. There, I visited a second IDP camp, this one called Daudu 1, where nearly 6,000 people reside. Life in this camp seemed significantly more remote than in Massacre, perhaps because it's 5 hours away from the Nigerian capital. The sight that struck me first was the many small children with bloated stomachs, a clear indicator of starvation and malnutrition. Now, it's one thing to see videos of them in such a condition. It's another thing to see them standing in front of you. It can be quite heart-wrenching. Now, here at Daudu 1, my initial discovery was that the people in this camp were not affected by the Boko Haram insurgency, which they informed me they couldn't really speak on. Rather, all of them fled the violence of the Fulani tribesmen, a detail critical in my investigation because now we can look into the other end of this two-pronged story of deadly persecution. I set up my equipment and made sure that everything was good to go. Unlike the previous day, I anticipated that there would be several, if not a majority, of interviewees who would feel more comfortable conducting the interview in the native language of Hausa. Luckily, a translator from a nearby location was able to assist me. I knew there were several dicey questions that I couldn't ask at the outset, seeing as there were most likely both soldiers and security forces nearby. I wanted to investigate this, but I had to be careful that I didn't blow the whole thing. As we learned, the military takes a long time to respond to reports of attacks. I wanted to question them about this, about what we learned from the government source. I saved those questions for near the end of the IDP camp visit. Our first interview was again with the chairman of the camp, originally from a village called Mbagwa, who revealed that the violence from the Fulani fighters began initially as a dispute over crops, land, and cattle, but then gradually shifted to be religiously motivated, a theme that would become much more apparent as I explored it more later.
The name of his village is Mbagwa, and that why he was in the village, he was a farmer, he was also rearing things like sheep, and those things were meeting his needs. But because of the crisis, he's right now in the camp and nothing practically to meet his needs.
From what you've seen, is it mainly a farmland dispute between the Fulanis and the villagers, or is it expressly Christian persecution by the Fulanis?
It has to do with Christian persecution, because he described that before now, they would live with these Fulanis and have some dispute, but it was just a matter of just sit down and settle things. But now it's been years. Describe it as starting since 2013. So it's been years, and he does not even know when it will end. So it has to do with Christian, and what he described, he said that the most people that are affected are Christian.
A lot of news in America is denying that this religious persecution of Christians is even happening. What would be your response to that?
He's emphasizing that it's actually Christian persecution, for the reason being that churches are being burnt down, schools are being destroyed, clergymen are being kidnapped and killed. So for those reasons, he believes strongly that it is Christian persecution.
Another individual named Simon, this one not involved with camp leadership but still having very valuable insight, told us that the persecution is not only religiously motivated when it comes to the Fulanis, but there's also an occupational agenda. What a lot of it boils down to is the fact that Christians own the land and Muslims own the cows. The Muslims are trying to drive out the Christians and take over the land for two reasons. The first being that many of the Christians owned very fertile land, and it was coveted by the Muslims. The second is a more obvious one. Christians are persecuted for following the teachings of Jesus Christ.
After most of the attacks, these Fulani herdsmen occupy the places that they send people away. So it's not just about coming to attack. It's the fact that they are coming to send people away to occupy their homelands. And so that is what he said. In fact, that as he's talking to you presently, they cannot actually access their own houses, their own homes, their farms. Now, if you go there, you're either killed or you actually see how dangerous it is.
Now, we learned earlier that when an attack does happen, it sometimes takes up to 40 days for the government to respond. I decided to ask him a follow-up question that I had considered earlier. When the government does respond, what does that look like? Are they actually dealing with the Islamic terrorism threat?
If this the Nigerian army or the security apparatus in the country are actually responding, they wouldn't have been in the IDP up to this time. They've been here since 2018, and some other persons even before then. So, and up till now, in fact, he said a day before yesterday, a number of some persons from the IDPs actually went back home to actually fish, and 3 out of the 5 were killed and 2 had to come back. He believes that the Nigerian government have all it takes to actually resolve this issue, because he believes that they have enough weapons to actually repel these bandits or this insecurity, and he also feels that they have manpower enough to actually do that. But he is not actually saying that. But none of this has been recorded, and so it's for him. He feels that probably maybe they actually do not want to do so much about it.
Simon brings up a good point here. If the Nigerian government had indeed responded properly, they wouldn't still be in IDP camps. They would be home. This was something that was echoed by other interviewees back at Wasakam. These people want to go home. Continued presence of terrorism and lax responses from the military and the government are preventing that from happening. Well then, why don't Christians rise up and do something about it themselves? Then, Simon said something crazy.
Even when the security comes, most of the times, what they observe is that those security persons are saying they are sent not to actually have a fight with this person, but to arrest criminals. He feels there is something more deterring the efforts and the results of the security personnel.
According to Simon, whenever security forces do respond, they arrest quote-unquote criminals. Sometimes these criminals include people armed and fighting in self-defense. Strangely, the system apparently doesn't allow for that kind of thing to happen. This testimony aligns perfectly with hard facts that we do have access to. In the mid-2010s, a man named Sunday Jackson, a farmer from northeast Nigeria, was attacked by Fulani who attempted to stab him to death. He and 3 others, acting in self-defense, stabbed and killed the Fulani. The response? A death sentence by hanging for Sunday Jackson, delivered in 2021. But thanks to outside pressure, the sentence was dropped and he was allowed to walk free. But not after spending 10 years in custody for acting out of protection for his own life. What this means is that even if Christians had the means of responding to the threats of persecution themselves, since the government largely won't do it, they risk imprisonment from the government for being criminals. There's substantial evidence and support for this argument. Now, refocusing on the explicit annihilation of Christians in the regions, we talked to a man named Julius who served in the local government. The Benue State, where Daudu 1 is located, is primarily Christians, yet Muslims are not affected by the violence in that area.
So like Benue State is a Christian state. So he said that most of the people that they are killing that he knows are Christian. And he said that even the few Muslims around that he knows, none of them is affected that he knows of. So he said that the people that have been affected, the people that have been killed are Christian.
Esther is a lady that we talked to from the village of Mbai. She had this to say.
For now, they thought it was just because of farmland. But now, she's seeing that it's not just about the farmland. It's because they are Christian and they are Muslim, so the persecution is coming solely because of their faith. So she thinks it's Christian persecution because she said that in the course of this fight, churches are being attacked, clergymen are being killed, even some worshippers are being kidnapped. So there has been a lot happening in the church. It's affecting the church directly. So she believes that it is Christian persecution.
I had a very rudimentary view of the Fulani Christian conflict going into Daudu 1. The Christians had the land and the Fulanis had the cattle. The cattle graze on the Christians' land and fights break out, leading to Fulani killings of Christians. But the people at Daudu 1 were telling me a different story. The story they were telling me seemed to be one of targeting. Every single person I interviewed at Daudu 1, be they a leader of the camp or a refugee, fled on the exact same date, December 31st, 2018. It was described to me in the same way by multiple people. At around 10 or 11 at night, the Fulanis charged in during New Year's celebrations. They slaughtered and killed, driving out the very Christians that I was now interviewing. To me, this indicated a very clear, coordinated attack on many villages in the north. And what it sounds like is that the militants anticipated celebrations on New Year's and attacked ruthlessly. Of course, 2018 is 8 years ago. I asked the interviewees about what they think about the persecution in the North today. What I learned is that it is strikingly minimal compared to previous years, but not because the vigor of the offenders has subsided by any means, but because there are very few people left up there to persecute. This meant that the violence is steadily starting to move southward. This news story was starting to challenge my earlier preconceived notion. Could there be something deeper? Could it be that the conflict was not solely about land? I think so, and the people of Daudou 1 confirmed this to me. But I have to keep challenging it and go deeper. Another aspect that I learned is that the refugee camps themselves are not safe havens. They have very little food, limited access to water at all, let alone clean water, almost no medicinal supplies, and the people are lacking in nearly every other resource. To make matters worse, the camps are perfect targets for human traffickers. I learned that at Daudou 1 alone, 15 children were unaccounted for by the time I had gotten there. The final place we visited to wrap up our investigation was Yalwata, a small village also located in Benue State. To get there, we drove on the main road. All looked calm and benign, but the reality was exactly the opposite. I learned from multiple locals that for a portion of my drive into Yalwata, it was very dangerous on either side of the road. Killings or kidnappings could be occurring at this very moment, but we wouldn't know because tall bushes and rolling hills limited the field of view. Yalwata was the final destination of my journey because it's a focal point in the entire conflict. Reeling from repeated attacks, the natives have refused to leave. Unlike those in the IDP camps, the people in Yalwata have chosen to remain in their lands. While noble, this comes with very bloody consequences. Yalwata attracted global attention in summer of last year after a particularly brutal raid by Fulani militants crippled the village. Populated by only about 750 people, the Fulanis killed 258, a third of the entire village. And the killing was indiscriminate. Men, women, and children were slaughtered in their homes and burned. But that wasn't the only attack on Yalwata. In August, another 3 were killed, leading to a women's protest demanding that security for the locals be increased. Yet to my surprise, I learned that there's a military base literally located in Makurdi, not 30 minutes away. However, the story I heard was the same that I heard time and time again at the other IDP camps. When the military was needed the most, it did not do its job of protecting the Nigerian Christians. Yalwata was the ideal spot to round out my investigation about the violence against Christians in Nigeria. It was a primary source location. Here was where I needed to dig in and get my final questions resolved. The rest of my questions would be answered here, in this very town situated near both a major highway and fertile farmland. Yet before I could interview anyone, I had to secure the favor of the council leaders. Once we arrived, 2 rows of chairs were placed opposite each other in an area shaded by several big trees next to a church. I would later learn that many of those who survived the June assault had taken refuge at that church. For some inexplicable reason, it was allowed to stand. Those who were there at the time of the attack survived. Now, having the council's approval, I set up my equipment and began interviewing. It was time for me to get to the bottom of this global issue once and for all. Much of American media is denying that Christians are being slaughtered by the thousands. So I need to know, is it clear and undeniable Christian persecution? A man named Godwin gave us some very helpful initial background into the inception of the horrific attack on Yalwata, occurring in June 2025.
During June 13th, 2025. We were here around that time, 10 to 11 o'clock in the night. We had some gunshot from Yalwata here at the extreme end of the community. So we had some gunshot, matches. Then we confirmed that these people belong to henchmen who came to attack us. So the attack was very heavy, very brutal, because they start burning shops, houses, and then macheting people, both young and old. Even the children under age, that is about 2 years or thereabout, they were macheting them. And all of them were killed on that day. We cannot even go about 2 kilometers away from where you are seeing us now. We have some security guarding us now. So at least we don't hear gunshot as from now. Not quite long, but that is what we are experiencing here now.
This was very similar to another description that another interviewee named John gave us.
Yeah, it was raining on that fateful day.
You will have a clear you away.
Yeah, people were sleeping in their houses, in their rooms.
One youngest Hishilan Hamas by Hiwa Ubuka who
Okay, and suddenly they started hearing gunshots outside.
Kwane ngwelu ji mwanga lu ha kwa hitemi Yalwata and ha chi Yalwata chi yan kwala lu erin yeme.
Okay, it didn't actually just happen at the spot. It spread all around different points in Yalwata.
We he wayo.
Okay, they started killing people.
Zanza bada nyo hintemi kaswa pe yu mba yangi mo kitu howe wa nyo awilu ejiri yavenga.
Okay, that the killings spread down to the market where other people had already run from crisis and were kept or camping.
Ma we he uberene yo.
And started bringing down houses and bringing people who were sleeping inside out to kill.
This gives us a pretty good idea of how bad this attack was. In mid-June, Fulani attackers came concealed under the cover of darkness. They slaughtered and killed anyone they found, even pregnant women and children. And their motive aligned perfectly with what we discovered at Dowdu 1, anti-Christian persecution combined with a desire to control the lands owned by Nigerian Christians. Listen to what Godwin had to say.
We don't know because we have no problem with them, but we believe that they want to take over the land. That is their intention, to take over the land. All churches around here were burnt to ashes, except the central church here you are seeing.
What we also discovered is that the problem didn't just spring up during the June attack. It stretches years back to 2011.
So in 2011,
Okay, the crisis, this issue of insecurity actually started since 2011.
When he ever seen 2011 la, he would say Kirega villages.
Okay, that since 2011 the crisis started. They started attacking them and burning their places, but in the interiors.
That is 2011. Yango kwala nongulu na hala.
Okay.
Makijume ya yango kralu. Very never oga.
Okay, he said, just as he actually told you before, that he brought you back to the 2011 experiences that led to this present incident. Around the 2011 and earlier, the killings were, just as you've said, they were actually focusing more on the men and leaving the women. But when it got closer to the 2025 experiences and crisis, they didn't actually leave anyone out of their attacks. Whoever they found was killed. Okay, and in most of the attacks, they actually see these persons killing people and destroying properties and echoing the call of Allah al-Kubar, which is actually synonymous with the Muslims.
According to John, the main goal was Christian persecution. We see burning of churches and chants of Allahu Akbar as a running theme of this violence. Our interview with a Catholic named Achin provided excellent insight into this issue.
The attackers came in large number at about 10 p.m. in the night, started shooting sporadically, and every part of this town was engulfed by the gunshots. And the result in the next day for the survivor, we that survived to witness what happened in the night, we discovered that children were burnt, women were massacred, the aged women and men were killed in their cold blood, burned beyond recognition. And what we managed to count and got the figure, we got up to 258 that the family members were able to tell that yes, this person, we lost him, this person was involved, this person was killed, and then we wake up to see that.
Perhaps the craziest part of all of this is when Achin told us that the security forces were literally present during the attack. From what it sounds like, they stood idly by.
We are unprotected. Even the night of June 13, there were security posted at Yalwata. Here there was security with ammo tank. Police were here, but then we were killed. So why else do we need the soldiers around us? So the authorities questioned the level of the operation of the army, and that was when they redeployed some of the armies
Major S.Y. Waziri was brought in, and then since the stay of Major S.Y. Waziri in the Yalwata community, we give him that credit. We haven't had any issue or sign of gunshot here. One cannot trek beyond 4 to 5 kilometers. If you are outside where the soldiers are camped and you come back to life, you give God the glory.
Achin echoed the main goal of the Fulani fighters, which is an occupational agenda to drive the Christians out of their homelands and take over. We also learned that while we were there, at that very moment, Yalwata was under siege.
We understand the faces of these hideous crime committers. Fulanis. For me, I don't target on no government or any kind of banditry or whatsoever. They are purely Fulani terrorists because we know them. They come, they graze around before we stay with them, mingle with them, we know them by their names, and then today we and them cannot stay as human beings. They come and kill us like animals. The main agenda is to ransack the community, destabilize us, send us packing and occupy. It's occupational agenda. What we are experiencing in the Yalwata community and other parts of Guma and Nigeria at large. There is an agenda that they are chasing, and if they are not conquered, we will not rest. We are Christian, and then our land is fertile. Two things involved. We are Christian. Number one, we are offenders because we worship God. Number two, we have a fertile land and they don't want us to make use of it.
Perhaps the most impactful part of my investigation in Yalwata was when the locals took us on a tour of the village, which had been burned to the ground. In one example alone, around 57 or 58 people were burned in a single building. That building once looked like this. And because the people thought it was safe due to its close proximity to the road, they would be safe by taking refuge there. Sadly, that wasn't the case. By the time we got there, the building looked like this. Both human bones and burned goods still littered the area. Achin provided us with exclusive images of what the immediate aftermath of the attack looked like. Though we have blurred some of the more horrific parts, some viewers might find these images disturbing, so caution is advised.
There's about 5 people burned to ashes. Son is being butchered like an animal. About 12 here, burned to ashes. Another store. More than this. Issue children. Grown up one. A bike. Properties worth millions of naira destroyed.
In an effort to preserve primary source evidence, you can find the full, unedited videos on my Patreon at Will Asks Questions. In addition to providing us with these videos, Achin also gave us photos of a tomb that was destroyed by Fulanis just days before we arrived. This is what that looked like.
This is a grave that Fulani people have destroyed. A grave they built this last Saturday.
Finally, on the tour of Yalwata, Achin bravely narrated some examples of the mass atrocities. Check it out.
5 persons were killed, a husband and a wife and 3 children were butchered, macheted. As you can see the sign of blood on the wall. 5 persons were butchered in this building and they tried to pack the things that were inside, dump on them and put fire, set ablaze.
That's blood.
The black.
Bro, this person was trying to escape over the roof, and he was shot.
So they have, and that is all blood.
Can we get a video here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Blood building you are seeing here. A family of 8 were killed. One little girl managed to escape.
The answer to my question was a resounding yes. Every single interviewee confirmed to me that what may have started as a cattle grazing land dispute many years ago has transformed into the unadulterated mass slaughter of Christians. Not 4 kilometers away from where we were interviewing was considered an extremely dangerous zone. We were told that Fulanis actively waited there, and with the village practically under siege, food and resources were becoming scarcer by the day. Violence, according to Achin and others, began way back in 2011 and steadily got worse. It became undeniable that it was persecution against Christians. After the jarring experience we had at Yalwata, our investigation can be rounded out in a brief summary. With Boko Haram slaughtering people and raiding in the north, Fulanis raiding and pillaging villages across the rest of the country and moving closer to the central belt, Christians are being driven out of their homelands and forced to flee by 2-pronged persecution. They can't stay in their villages because there's a complicit government that won't respond in time, emboldening the attackers. On the flip side, when the oppressed take up arms against their foes, they are imprisoned and treated like criminals. Their only choice is to run away with nothing but the clothes on their backs. They try to take refuge in the IDP camps, but those too have problems of their own. Disease, lack of adequate food, water, and medicine, along with human traffickers that take their pickings from the camps. There's almost nowhere that they can turn to for safety. This is the reality of the crisis. And it's quickly getting worse. This concludes my investigation into the reality of Christian persecution in Nigeria. Please like, subscribe, and share this video. But above all, pray for the suffering Christians in Nigeria. This crisis is real. I'm Will B. Genie, and this is Will Asks Questions. Thanks for stopping by.